BBC World Service. And now India, a people partitioned. In the first of a new 5-part series, Andrew Whitehead looks back at the events of 50 years ago. Part 1. The Gathering of the Storm.
The song says, you get angry with the little girl for breaking a bottle of hair oil. But what about you old men breaking India apart? What about that? That was the children's rhyme written by Ananda Shankar Roy. But it was not just a children's rhyme, it was a nationalist outburst, and that's the way it's accepted now.
My name is Ananda Shankar Roy. My little daughter was playing with a bottle of hair oil. She broke it and I got furious. So instead of rebuking her, I just sat down and wrote a poem in which I took to task the leaders of my country for breaking up Bengal as well as India. Like little children, they broke it.
A broken nation. At the moment of independence in 1947, India was torn in two. The partition which gave birth to the Muslim nation of Pakistan happened only because millions of Indians wanted it that way. But the cost was so enormous, perhaps 12 million refugees and more than 500,000 killed, that partition still evokes the spectre of mayhem and massacre. Shantanu Rai, from a well-connected Hindu family in Calcutta, still bears a sense of loss.
I never thought the country could ever be divided. I think the whole thing was so sad to me in my early 20s to be suddenly find that what I've been working for, what we're praying for, just being destroyed in front of us. I had very great anger that this should have happened, that we should have permitted it, whether he was a Hindu or a Muslim. We Indians should have permitted it.
Among some Muslims, too, there's a keen sense that whatever the political imperatives, the price of partition has been painfully high. The swirling currents of South Asian politics have made Laila Murshid a citizen of 3 nations in turn. Born an Indian, she became a Pakistani and is now a Bangladeshi. She lives in Dhaka, capital of Bangladesh, but often crosses into India to visit her home city of Calcutta.
When I see the artificial border, the no man's land, and the people on one side and the people on the other side, they look alike, they speak the same language, they dress alike, they eat the same food. I sort of don't seem to understand why this was necessary. We could have lived in peace in Bengal. I should say it's a tragedy.
The aim of these programmes is not to apportion blame for that tragedy. Too many fingers have been pointed over the past 50 years. It's to tell the story of how the partition whirlwind affected tens of millions of Indians, Hindus, Muslims and Sikhs, and how it still haunts South Asia. The British certainly can't be acquitted of responsibility. The imperial power had plenty of practice at playing off one community against the other. And when the curtain finally came down on colonial rule, it did so with almost indecent haste. In March 1947, Lord Mountbatten took up office as India's last British Viceroy. Within 3 months, he'd announced that he'd failed in his aim to keep India in one piece.
To my great regret, it has been impossible to obtain agreement that will preserve the unity of India. But there can be no question of coercing any large areas in which one community has a majority to live against their will under a government in which another community has a majority. And the only alternative to coercion is partition.
Just 11 weeks later, with many still unsure where the new international borders would run, partition took effect. At 2 separate ceremonies, 2 sovereign nations were born. Nations which have since fought 3 wars and still haven't learnt to be good neighbours. For Muhammad Ali Jinnah, head of the Muslim League, the creation of Pakistan must have been more than he ever expected. Almost single-handed, he'd moulded the Muslim minority into a nation-state. For Jawaharlal Nehru, India's first Prime Minister, the sadness of seeing his country cut in 2 had to be set against achieving the long-cherished goal of independence.
At the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps India will awake to life and freedom. हिंदुस्तान हमारा है, हिंदुस्तान हमारा है, हिंदुस्तान हमारा है। देश हमारा हिंदुस्तान, सर्वे सुंदर हिंदुस्तान, जीवो गाए जगमस्तान, जय जय भारत हिंदुस्तान। जीवे 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 पाकिस्तान, जीवे 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 पाकिस्तान, पाकिस्तान पाकिस्तान, जीवे पाकिस्तान, पाकिस्तान पाकिस्तान।
It marks the fulfillment of the destiny of the Muslim nation, which has made great sacrifices in the past few years to have its homeland. Pakistan Zindabad.
By the time Jinnah and Nehru greeted their new nations, the human toll was already mounting. India's two main communities, Hindus and Muslims, were at each other's throats.
This is Richard Sharp calling Radio Newsreel from a street corner in Calcutta where there's a fight going on. The road is strewn with papers which have been pushed out. There go some shots. Those are the enemy, as we may say. And now there are mobs waiting for darkness to fall. Darkness is just falling now, and they're waiting to come and attack. Whether they're Hindus or Muslims, I cannot tell you. Just they're Hindus. A policeman just tells me they're Hindus waiting to come and attack this Muslim quarter. They're wildly excited, these people now, and nothing that I can see except a very good hard smack on the nose will stop them.
A hard smack on the nose, always high on the list of colonial peacekeeping methods, did not suffice. Calcutta smouldered for months. It was here that the first big partition riots erupted, a year almost to the day before independence. A mixed city with a Hindu majority, the capital of the mainly Muslim province of Bengal. Provincial elections had seen the pro-Pakistan Muslim League capture almost all the Muslim seats. The system of separate electorates had been one of Britain's more controversial constitutional innovations. On the 16th of August 1946, a rally called by the Muslim League provincial government to press for the creation of Pakistan sparked off the Great Calcutta Killing.
We had no idea that there was going to be riots on that day, but we had serious apprehension because the way Muslims of Calcutta were agitated and the way they seemed to have gone crazy about Pakistan, and Surwar, the Chief Minister of Bengal, had declared that day as a public holiday, and this had aroused misgivings among the Hindus, because since I was working with the Red Cross and I had a lot of Hindu colleagues with me, and they warned me on 15th of August. They said, Salahuddin, tomorrow is closed holiday, but get ready, we might have to take ambulances out. I said, why?
Salahuddin Ahmed and his colleagues in the Calcutta Red Cross faced a busy few days. By the time a measure of calm returned, somewhere between 3,000 and 10,000 people had been killed. He believes the carnage convinced many that there was no alternative to carving up the country on religious lines. Nazimuddin Hashim, then a student in Calcutta and later a government minister in Bangladesh, believes this was the intention of the political sponsors of the violence within the Muslim League.
The Hindus' morale was shattered by this bloodletting, and they became convinced that it was not possible to stay with the Muslims. And this, I think, was what was intended. So once this, as a result of direct action day, this thing happened, the Hindu middle class was convinced that it was not possible to live with the Muslims in the same way.
The Muslim League had decided to abandon its old reliance on constitutional politics and turn to direct action. Passions had been inflamed by weeks of excited political rhetoric. The slogan most often heard at its meetings was Ladke Lenge Pakistan. We will win Pakistan by force. On the 16th, Direct Action Day, trouble started shortly after dawn. Rashid al-Hussein was then a young Muslim boy living in a mixed area in the heart of the city.
That day in the morning, at about 6:30, I just got up from the bed and was brushing my teeth. Then all of a sudden I saw that there is next to my grandfather's house, which is opposite to our house, and I saw that people attacked, Muslim people attacked that house. They were trying to break the door. That is the first time I saw a young lady of 16 who's completely naked. He has been dragged from the inside of the house. How they have killed, I don't know. There was no blood. They are pulling her by the legs and just dropped just in front of me. I was in the first floor.
Most of the people obviously showed signs of being intoxicated, whether alcohol or with enthusiasm, and they carried huge portraits, imaginary portraits of Zina leading the battle of the hordes against the infidels, that sort of atmosphere. And the first victim I saw was a poor porter, Hindu, and he had just come into this side street, and there a Muslim in a lungi broke away from a procession with an iron rod and hit him on the head, you see.
The processions were making their way to a massive Muslim League rally in central Calcutta. So too, still unaware of the scale of the rioting, was Badruddin Umar. His father was Bengal secretary of the League and one of the main speakers.
I never saw such a huge crowd ever in my life. And before the meeting started, there was a great lot of agitation. And people were shouting all around that riots had broke out, you see, in this area and that area. And Muslims are being slaughtered, you see. You are not doing anything, etc. And they were shouting at the leaders. And other people were trying to calm them. And then Khaja Nazimuddin, he made quite a communal speech. He said that we have to fight against the Hindus, etc. But then in the rostrum also, there was opposition against what he was saying. But the situation was such that the meeting could not be continued for long.
By now, gangs were roaming around central Calcutta. Police officers such as S.K. Bhattacharjee could see what was happening, but had been told to stay off the streets.
Though the cry is coming and help demanding, but we are kept inside for 2 days, 16, 17.
The police were not allowed to go out?
Not allowed, by the government.
By the Muslim League government?
Muslim League government. We are not allowed to go outside. And on the 18th fast, we came out. Our first work was only to rescue the persons from Muslim area to Hindus and Hindu area to Muslims. That was first duty.
The violence had taken a brutal turn. As with almost all the partition unrest, you simply can't talk of one community as the aggressors and the other the innocent victims. All must share the blame, and quite certainly, as Shantanu Rai recalls, all shared the suffering.
I saw children being thrown out of second-floor flats of the houses, and I've seen people being speared to death. I've seen Muslims kill Hindus. I've seen Hindus kill Muslims. In our area where we used to live, any stranger coming in was derobed, and they wanted to find out whether he was a Hindu or not. If he was not a Hindu, he was murdered on the spot. Then all these bodies that were killed, whether it's Hindus or Muslims, they were dumped on the main road, in fact the crossing of Rasa Road, and they were lying in a heap. And our friends got together and we put them in the lorries and took them to Keratala, a burning ghat, where we cremated them. We didn't know what their religion was, but we did this.
While volunteers were clearing the bodies, many politicians were busily fanning the flames of communal hatred. On both sides there were muscle men, small-time politicians, gang leaders, or simply streetwise bullies, who took up cudgels with eager enthusiasm. Ghazi Ghulam Ajmeri was a leader of the Muslim League students in Calcutta and prominent in the League's paramilitary Muslim National Guard.
They used to call me brave man, strong arm. Of course, I had to defend my life also, that is why, But I never used any shotgun or any sword.
What did you use?
And I'm a good boxer. My foot, everything I use. And sometimes I took the bamboo stick from their hand, beating them. Yeah, we are fighting for Pakistan. You know. I can tell you that, we never meant to kill the Hindus. But Hindus started killing us everywhere.
That's what everyone says, of course. The other side started it. The first day or two, it said that Muslims were on top in the street battles. But Calcutta's Hindus had numbers on their side and some of the city's most formidable gang leaders. Men like Gopal Pata, a close friend of a leading Congress Party politician. Then as now, criminals needed political patrons and politicians needed friends in low places. Gopal Pata, still surrounded by fit young men you wouldn't go out of your way to annoy, still lives amid the streets where he was once a local warlord.
দেশকে বাঁচাতে হবে পাকিস্তানে চলে যাবে আরো নির্যাতন হবে
It was a very critical time for the country. The country had to be saved. We thought that if the whole area becomes Pakistan, there will be more torture and more repression. So I called all my boys and said that this is the time when you have to retaliate and you have to answer brutality with brutality. So if you come to know that one murder has taken place, you commit 10 murders. The ratio should be 1:10. That was my order to my boys.
So how did you kill people? What did you use? Did you use guns or swords or spears?
আমাদের অস্ত্র-শস্ত্র যখন আমরা ফাইটে নেমেছি যে যেখান থেকে যা পেয়েছে
So basically people used all sorts of weapons. They had small knives, they had big choppers and sticks and rods, guns, pistols. We secured some weapon during the Second World War. The American army was also in Calcutta. The Negroes were here. Buy them one bottle of whiskey, they would give you 1 pistol and 100 cartridges. That way we secured all these weapons. All these weapons were used in these fights.
Alongside the big gangsters were small-time strongmen such as Jugal Ghosh, also a Hindu, and again with Congress Party connections.
আমার একটা আখড়া ছিল, ক্লাব ছিল। আমি ফিজিক্যাল ইনস্ট্রাক্টর।
I had a wrestling club. I used to train boys. I was a good wrestler, and when I told my boys what to do, they did it. I went round to the local sawmills, the cowyards, and factories around here. I was very well known then. I asked all of them for money. I'd say, give me 2,000 rupees, or 1,000, or 5,000, whatever I felt like. They didn't complain. They all paid up. Then I told my boys, for one murder you get 10 rupees, for a half murder 5 rupees. And that's how we got going.
The fish ponds and paddy fields of Noakhali in southern Bangladesh are a world away from the hustle and hoodlums of Calcutta. But it was here that the sparks from the Great Calcutta Killing first took hold. In October 1946, serious rioting erupted in Noakhali, an area with a long history of good relations between the Muslim majority and the more prosperous Hindu minority. Ashoka Gupta, whose husband was then working as a judge in Chittagong, was among the first relief workers to reach the area.
Noakhali was a repercussion of the people who had come from Calcutta and told the stories, and that has infuriated the Muslims, that so many Muslims have been killed in Calcutta. Therefore, we must get retaliation. There was a lot of killing, arson and loot, and also abduction and conversion. When it started, it snowballed. When it started in this village, then it happened in another village. Then people started to run away. At that time, Muslims had the upper hand. And they started to say that if you want to live here, you have to convert yourself to the faith of Islam, and then only you can stay.
The thousands of forced conversions were to many at the time the most unsettling aspect of the Noakhali riots. There was an air of religious frenzy to the unrest. In other riots, attackers often came from outside the immediate area. In Noakhali, people burnt, raped and ransacked within their own villages, as Jana Chowdhury, then a young Hindu girl, remembers all too vividly.
About 13th October, সকাল বেলাতে যখন
On the 13th October, in the morning, at around 9 o'clock, hundreds of people came to our house with flaming torches, shouting Allahu Akbar. And we were very scared, and we fled from the house and hid ourselves in a nearby garden, and they set our house on fire.
By all accounts, the attacks were well organised. Several armed groups, apparently acting in coordination, marauded around Noakhali. On all sides, one man is widely held responsible for the riots, Ghulam Sarwar, a local Muslim politician.
Ghulam Sarwar, he was aggressive and looking at everybody disdainfully, that he was the master of the whole situation. I saw him. He was a trouble creator. He was a instigator of the riots. He had spoken to the people, oh, we want peace. But peace he wanted, you could look at his eyes and you could see that he's speaking, but his eyes were saying something else.
As for the root cause of the violence, that seems to have been the startling inequality between Hindus and Muslims in Noakhali. M.K. Mazumdar, part of what is now a small and none too prosperous Hindu minority in Noakhali, says in the old days Hindus held sway and the Muslim majority did their bidding.
শিক্ষা দীক্ষা ব্যবসা বাণিজ্য কাজ কারবার ল্যান্ড প্রপার্টি সবগুলি
Education, trade, business, land, the Hindus dominated them all. In this area, Hindus were very much on top. There were a few well-off Muslim families, but the biggest estates were mainly Hindu-owned, and that only changed when laws were brought in to break up the big landholdings.
The numbers killed in Noakhali were modest compared to the Calcutta bloodletting, but the huge exodus of refugees and the intensity of the violence among people who lived peacefully together for centuries prompted Mahatma Gandhi to make one of his most famous peace missions. He came with his staff and shawl and a simple message that all are equal and all must be respected. Gandhi, a lawyer and politician who'd become the conscience of India, was a Hindu, but he came to Noakhali not simply to give succour to his own community, but to offer friendship and dignity to local Muslims.
Gandhiji first addressed us in the evening prayer that Hindus and Muslims, why shouldn't they have faith in each other, and why shouldn't there be any communal harmony? And he was very sorry, and that is where he first time said, you should sing with me. And he sang Ramdhun, there's Ishwar Allah, Tere Naam, Sabko Sammati De Bhagavan. That is, Ishwar, God and Allah, they're the same. And let all of us sing praise for him, and let there be no difference between us.
At the Gandhi ashram in Jayag in Noakhali, the songs Gandhi taught are still sung. Hindus and Muslims alike remember the barefoot old man who tramped around Noakhali in midwinter, traversing the perilous bamboo bridges over canals, ponds and rivers. Shailan Chatterjee, a journalist, was among those travelling with the Mahatma.
Gandhi decided to tour the entire area from one village to another village, you see, preaching his message of peace, brotherhood, unity and all that. Every day he would ask people accompanying him to sing a song of Tagore. Jodi tor dak shune keu na ashe tobe ekla cholo re, like that. You know, Tagore, Rabindranath Tagore, had written a poem, Walk Alone, if nobody responds to your call.
যদি তোর ডাক শোনে কেউ না আসে তবে একলা চলো রে যদি তোর ডাক
People did respond to Gandhi's call. Some Muslims were suspicious, but there's no doubt that the sincerity and humility of this man helped calm passions. Gandhi was eventually called away from Noakhali. Still more brutal riots had broken out in Bihar in North India. There, Hindus were the main aggressors. In the spring of 1947, the conflagration spread further to the killing fields of Punjab. Gandhi had promised to return to Noakhali for Independence Day, but he never got beyond Calcutta. where again simply his presence helped overcome communal tension and persuaded several gang leaders to hand in their arms, an event witnessed by Shailen Chatterjee.
Some people were very shabbily dressed. They came with swords, with daggers, and also small these country-made guns. They came. They said, yes, we have done. We are responsible. But now, Mahatma Ji, we assure you, we will never do it again. I saw them. This is something miracle. Even Mountbatten said that miracle of Calcutta, Gandhi's miracle.
A miracle of sorts. Some gang leaders had indeed been won over, but not Gopal Pata. At the third time of asking, he agreed grudgingly to meet Gandhi.
Professor Nirmal Bose, se amay bolle je Gopal.
Then when he called me, Professor Nirmal Bose, Gandhiji's secretary, he was the interpreter, he said that, Gopal, why don't you surrender your arms to Gandhiji? And I told him that with these arms, I saved the women of my area, I saved the people of my area. I will not surrender them to Gandhiji. Even if I have killed someone with a nail, I wouldn't surrender that also.
Just a few months later, Gandhi was assassinated in Delhi. His killer proved to be a Hindu hardliner who felt that Gandhi had betrayed his own community. As ever, Shailen Chatterjee was at his master's side as he made his way to his regular evening prayer meeting.
A young man, he tried to touch his feet. And immediately the man bowed and then he fired 3 shots. And Gandhi fell down. I rushed. I found from his shawl blood was coming out. Everybody was weeping. People called to hold that man. Some people were beating him. Immediately it was flashed on the radio and news also that it was a Hindu who killed him. Otherwise, people would have, riots would have taken place. People would have killed Muslims, but no Muslim killed him.
যদি তোর ডাক শোনে কেউ না আসে তবে একলা চলো রে
Friends and comrades, the light has gone out of our lives and there is darkness everywhere. Our beloved leader, Bapu as we called him, the father of the nation, is no more.
That programme was compiled and presented by Andrew Whitehead and produced by Zina Rohan. Next week, the killing fields of Punjab.